The Fabulous 413 podcast is funded by Northeast Solar, helping customers make the switch to solar for savings, energy security, and tax incentives. Learn more at northeast-solar.com.
Welcome to the Fabulous 413. I'm Khalees Smith.
And I'm Monty Belmonte. Later in the show, New York Times bestselling author and illustrator from Amherst, Tony DiTerlizzi.
Hot off the heels of the huge success of the Roku TV adaptation of his and Holly Black's Spiderwick Chronicles, Apple TV Plus will release an adaptation of another one of Tony's books in the new series WondLa, which premieres this Friday.
Fun. But what's funner, Spiderwick or WondLa?
Why choose? And why say funner? Or maybe the better option is why not say funner?
Later in the show, we'll talk with the funnest word nerd we know, Emily Brewster, from Springfield's Merriam-Webster.
Indeed, she is the most fun. But first,
where is New England Public Media
Springfield
offices? In Springfield.
Yeah.
Like right by the house that is underneath the highway where the cops hang out.
Oh,
And
okay.
kind of across the street, like kitty corner-ish from the Memorial Bridge going to West Springfield, which is its own entity, and they like it that way.
Or in the old home of WGBY television, public television for Western Massachusetts, which is still here.
yes, right around the corner from where all of the strip clubs used to be.
You have taken me on a real tour of Springfield, and I'm grateful for it. I don't.
As Monty would say, we want to give you a sense of placiness.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. You want to
give
know what I'm
everyone-
having for dinner tonight?
Yeah, what?
A hamburger.
Oh,
Nice.
I decided.
Are you cooking it on the big green egg smoker?
Nope. I'm gonna cook in a pan.
are you making fun smash burgers?
Maybe I will.
Yeah, they're the best. It takes all of like a minute to make them, much like Neapolitan pizza, but they're crunchy and delicious and beefy.
I think that's what I'll do. Thank you, Khalees.
No problem. I'm here to help.
I'm always vacillating between thick and thin burgers,
Same.
and I don't eat them very often, to be clear. But in my mind, I'm thinking about them all the time. Vacillating.
You have that in common with my partner, constantly thinking about burgers.
I cannot wait.
There is a
Cannot wait.
burger place that makes smash burgers that comes to the brewery on the patch called Patch Burgers, but they didn't name themselves because they're on the patch, but they do make a great smash burger, and I'm a fan.
Before it.
I'll have to have them when I'm in Turners Falls in November.
Yo, spoiler alert.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Former 413 vacationer John Hodgman wrote a book of fake trivia while at the Lady Killigrew Cafe at the Montague Book Mill. Not exclusively, but I mean a lot of it he wrote there. He was asked to appear on Comedy Central's The Daily Show with Jon Stewart to talk about his book, which includes such subjects as 700 hobo names and a brief timeline of the lobster in America.
After his Daily Show appearance, Jon Stewart asked Hodgman to become a regular contributor to The Daily Show as both a resident expert and as a deranged billionaire.
Until that character got too real for America. You may also know Hodgman as an advertising icon, having appeared as the personification of a PC in the Mac vs. PC Apple computer ads.
By the way, I'm still on your team in that conversation, still on PC team. He continues to delight the masses weekly in his role as Judge John Hodgman with both his podcast and column in the New York Times Magazine. His Judge John Hodgman podcast live will be coming to Western Mass later this year.
But the reason we're talking to our friend Hodgman today is because once again, and since 2011, Hodgman has curated his Comedy Cabaret at Wilco's Solid Sound Festival at Mass Mocha, which is this weekend, and Hodgman will be there, and so will we. Thank you for joining us today, John Hodgman.
Our friend Hodgman is the thinnest and least celebrated book by Charles Dickens.
I want you to write that. In your,
Basically, it's a pamphlet.
Is it because it's hopeful? This is
I
Dickens we're
don't
talking
know.
about?
It's basically because I didn't live in that century. It's purely speculative. It's science fiction. It's the only science fiction book that Charles Dickens ever wrote. He imagined what life would be like in the 21st century, and staring back at him was my round, badly bearded face.
oh, your cute, badly bearded face.
Hey, thanks. You're both very cute, and it's a delight to be here on the Fabulous 413 yet again.
Thank you so much for being with us. I'm going to say if you write that book and bury it somewhere, people in the future will never know it's anachronistic.
Yes, that's true. I've written. People ask, "Will you ever write a novel?" The fact is, I've written 35. I've written them. That's what I said. I said it.
We have Emily Brewster on today too. We'll see if that's appropriate language.
They're just all buried across the country.
Oh, I love it.
Buried across two continents, both North and South America. It's a big scavenger hunt that I'm going to announce on my deathbed. But
Wonderful.
I'm not dead yet.
So we don't
And
get
as
the
much
clues.
fun as it is to be in the Fabulous 413 virtually here via radio, I'm very excited to be in the real 413 in just a couple of days.
John Hodgman's Comedy Cabaret. It's been going on since the second Solid Sound Festival. Tell us about your relationship with Wilco and Solid Sound.
Well, I went to the first Solid Sound Festival as a fan of Wilco and of Standing Outdoors and of Mass Mocha, by the way, which is where it's held, the incredible electrical parts factory that's been turned into a large-scale installation art museum, which is the best. And so I and my wife, who's a whole human being in her own right, we went to see Wilco. I think, Monty, you told me that it was happening. I had no idea.
That could very well be true.
Yeah.
We spent many a summer together when you still vacationed here.
We used to have a home in the Pioneer Valley and would spend a lot of time there, as my wife is a high school teacher and I am ever more marginally self-employed. So we had a lot of time in the summer to be hanging around. And Monty said, Wilco is doing this show at Mass Mocha. I said, I will go. And so we did. And it was a delight. I had never seen Wilco live before. I'd been a fan. And I remember towards the end of one of the songs, a giant freight train started to pass the field where the big outdoor concert is. Because there's a big train line there. This is North Adams was / is a city of industry. The industry now is Art and Wilco, but the industry then was moving things around. And the freight train was going by, and it takes a turn around the back of the stage. And when big trains turn, they make a lot of noise. And it sounded a little something like this. I'm one of the world's foremost train impersonators.
Oh, yes.
I believe it. It's wonderful.
But it sounded like that, except for about 25 minutes, it felt like. And, the band had to kind of stop playing for a second. And at the time, there was an application called Twitter. I don't know if it still exists, but at the time, there was an application called Twitter that wasn't ruining ourselves in the world.
Right.
But in fact was a wonderful place to make jokes with friends. And I tweeted, this train just made this terrible noise. It sounded like a real Wilco song finally. Because, Wilco in various incarnations has experimented with adding big noise experiments at the back end of some of their songs. And the Wilco account saw this and they went, ha. And a little bit later, I met Jeff, Tweedy, and Susie backstage in a different event. And he said, his people came to me after that and said, would you want to curate the comedy stage? And I said, yes, absolutely. And so every other year or so, barring major pandemic interruptions, I have gathered as many good friends as I can convince to come to North Adams to perform comedy. And it's been just a wonderful experience. And I have to say that, the first year that I was there just as a fan, already the comedy stage was incredible. It was with, we had Todd Barry, we had Kristen Schaal, not we, they, Eugene Merman, I think, reached out to all of them and also was there. Hannibal Buress was there. And I'm really, really excited that two of that incredible lineup are returning to the stage. Eugene Merman, who has been at the comedy stage a couple of times with me. And for the first time since then, Todd Barry is coming back. Excellent. Along with my co-host of the past couple of years, the amazing polymathic rapper, singer, comedian, actor, writer, Jean Grey.
She's amazing. They're amazing.
Yeah, Jean is the greatest. Dave Hill is going to be performing, and we're really excited to have Sydney Washington and Brittany Carney also performing. This is an incredible lineup, and it's going to be all Saturday afternoon. And don't worry, if you're going to be there, you're not going to miss any Wilco, because we stop as soon as Wilco starts.
No comedy during the Wilco.
I'm not cross-programming Wilco, for heaven's sake. No.
Right, not during their own festival.
No, not during their own festival, for heaven's sake.
And we are speaking with John Hodgman, who curates the Comedy Cabaret at Wilco's Solid Sound Festival, and we'll do so again this weekend, Saturday. We'll be there Friday doing our show live and then broadcasting Jason Isbell and Wilco on Friday night.
Indeed. I'm going to ask you questions not about Solid Sound, I'm sorry.
Acceptable.
Fantastic.
I might have some answers.
Just to keep it in 413, because that's what we do, but we're going to head to the Rockwell Museum to talk about the Mad Magazine exhibit, and you've done work for Mad Magazine.
Yes. I'm very, very happy whenever someone asks me for a biography, particularly of my writing, to say I've been published in the Paris Review and Mad Magazine. I was in the Mad Magazine in an issue that was curated by guest editor Weird Al Yankovic. That's how proud I got to be.
Wow.
That's
contribute
awesome.
That. Yeah. And I didn't know about this. What can you tell me about this Mad Magazine art exhibit? Because that's something I got to see.
I mean, it's looking at the full retrospective of the entirety of the run of the magazine, with several of the illustrators coming in to be a part of the exhibit and give talks and things. They've got editors coming through. It's really, really neat. And it's going to be up while you're here.
I will have to try and get over there and see it, because that, I mean, for obviously a few generations of little stinkers like me, Mad Magazine was truly a comedic inspiration. It's also how I saw R-rated movies before I could see R-rated movies. Like, I remember almost distinctly every panel of their parody of Brian De Palma's Dressed to Kill. This psychoerotic thriller, probably very problematic today.
Oh, yeah.
And
I'm
like,
sure.
you know, very hard R, and like, well, let's put this in a magazine the kids are going to buy. Sure. One of the things I learned from Mad Magazine that I worked into my own parenting, for good or ill. We have 2 human children. Now they're adults.
Yeah.
But, you know, like, kids need to engage with a little bit of culture that's a little bit above their pay grade. If they want to see a movie that seems a little bit too adult, I'm not saying that they should be watching TikTok all day long. I'm saying about like time-tested art that maybe isn't made for kids and maybe has some themes in it or some complications in it that make you a little worried as a parent. That's okay, I think, for the most part, for them to engage in. I did a whole series of podcasts on a British miniseries from the 70s called I, Claudius.
I love, oh, yes.
Claudius.
I listened to that.
Thank you
podcast.
very much.
That's one of the pieces. I have the similar experience to yours in that my parents loved that series, and so I saw it very early.
We had letters from all over the world of people who had been traumatized as a child by certain provocative scenes in I, Claudius that they wandered into, finding their parents watching.
Yep.
And yet I don't think anyone really regrets having been introduced to I mean, it's just such an important piece of art. And it's like, it reminds us that we're all naked and human and terrible and have been for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, not thousands of years. iPodius is that podcast, in case anyone wants to listen. I get nothing out of it. You know, it's now free, so go for it.
I have one of the t-shirts.
Thank you very much. I should note my co-host on that is the great Elliot Kalin of the Flophouse podcast.
Yes.
A Maximum Fun podcast, my network in which Judge John Hodgman appears. Plug.
And that's now, it's a worker-owned co-op or something along those lines, right? A new business model where that has really launched out into the world of podcasting in a unique way.
Yeah, Maximum Fun was founded by my co-host on Judge John Hodgman, Mr. Jesse Thorne, host of NPR's Bullseye interview program. Oh gosh, maybe 15 years ago. And it was always a artist-owned network in the sense that the network didn't own the rights to the shows. The artists who created them did, which was already pretty great and progressive and interesting and good. And then recently, he who had founded the podcast sold it to the employees. So it is now also an employee-owned cooperative, and it's going extremely well. If you want to listen to podcasts that, you know, are not beholden to a big sponsor or to a huge company, which now owns a number of huge companies that own most of the podcast networks. Maximum Fun has some really, really beautiful, inclusive, vibrant, diverse, funny podcasts about arts and culture, and you can get them all at MaximumFun.org. Plug.
Yep.
Always be plugging. You gotta be plugging.
And some beautiful ones in their archive too. Our IP Heat Rocks.
Oh yeah.
I can't help it.
Later in the show, New York Times bestselling author and illustrator from Amherst, Tony DiTerlizzi, on the Apple TV Plus release of another one of his book adaptations, WondLa's.
And we'll find out why we don't say funner or funnest with the most fun Merriam-Webster editor and frequent Judge John Hodgman guest, Emily Brewster from Merriam-Webster.
But up next, when and where will the Judge John Hodgman podcast live land here in the 413? And we'll find out which now A-list superstar was a virtual unknown during Hodgman's last Solid Sound Comedy Cabaret.
More with the curator of the Solid Sound Comedy Cabaret, John Hodgman. You're listening to the Fabulous 413 on 88.5 NEPM.
John Hodgman,
Oh yeah, here's me, John Hodgman.
who is curating the Comedy Cabaret at Mass Mocha, while Wilco
The
takes
Solid
over.
Sound Festival.
Solid Sound takes over the Mass Mocha Museum this weekend. Hodgman, you have invited me many times to appear on your podcast that we were talking about, the Judge John Hodgman podcast, where you adjudicate between minor household disputes. And then sometimes you take said podcast on tour. And that will be happening again this fall. And you are taking it here to the Fabulous 413.
Yes. Now, officially, we have not announced this tour, but I'm going to tell you. You heard it here first. It's called the Road Court Tour. And it has a new poster designed by the great comic book artist Phil Noto that is basically a ripoff of the Roadhouse poster starring Patrick Swayze.
Yes! I love that movie so much.
It's Patrick Swayze being very Swayze.
That is most throat-rippy.
Yes.
And it's a Sam Elliott movie, too, and I love Sam Elliott.
Oh, my God, yes.
Yeah. I should, but I don't love Monty's when Monty puts... Oh, God.
Beef. It's what's for dinner.
Every once in a while, we'll use the clip of him listing off the beef dishes
Beef
that got
bourguignon.
used. It's just so disturbing somehow.
Chateaubriand.
It just feels...
It's just fun to do.
Beef Wellington, pepper beef, beef jerky, beef fajitas.
It feels wrong.
And we'll be announcing officially the dates for that tour on stage at Solid Sound on Saturday. But I can let everyone know ahead of time that on November 8th, Judge John Hodgman will be returning to the Shea Theater in Turners Falls. Have you ever been there, Monty?
I've never heard of it.
Huh, you ever been to the Shea Theater in Turners Falls?
Never heard of it.
November 8th, we're going to be there. It's a Friday night. It's going to be so much fun. Monty, I dare say that we will invite you to be on stage. And please, if you'd like to come on stage too, all the more the merrier.
I'm very awkward on stage without an instrument in front of me.
Oh, do you play an instrument?
I play guitar.
Well, we'll just have you stand in front of a guitar.
Okay, great.
Oh, no, sorry, stand behind a guitar.
As long as it's nearby, then like the moral support is there.
I don't want to look. When we do these live shows, maybe some of you have been to a live podcast taping before. I'm going to tell you what the big difference is with the Judge John Hodgman show. Jesse Thorne and I stand on stage. We do not to throw any shade on these wonderful podcasts that obviously it makes a lot of sense for them to sit down behind a table with a black tablecloth on it for the entire time. But I wear judge's robes. Jesse wears a bailiff's uniform modeled on Bull's uniform from Night Court.
Nice.
We sing songs, we interact with the audience, and obviously we adjudicate disputes live on stage. And it's a lot of fun. And it's a big show. You know what I mean? We try to put on a show. And so if you want to come to it, everybody, we'll be announcing on sale tickets and stuff. But if you have a dispute that you'd like adjudicated live on stage in Turners Falls and you'd like me to consider it, just go to MaximumFun.org/JJHO. That's MaximumFun.org/JJHO. And you can submit your dispute there and say that you're going to be in Turners Falls. And guess what? If I get your dispute, I can't guarantee that we'll adjudicate it, but I'll send you a ticket link, an advanced ticket link.
Ooh.
So you've written several books.
Yes.
All of them really lovely. But let's say that you are living below like a certain income level and can only afford one of your books to really become familiarized with your written work. Which is the one?
Well, first of all, no one should feel obliged to purchase any of these books. They are probably available in your local library, which I hope that you will go and support. And I would say if you're listening in the Fabulous 413, probably Vacationland has the most pertinence to you, as that is my nonfiction book of funny stories, about half of which are set in Maine, where I get to live part of the time, and the other half of which are set in Western Massachusetts, in the Pioneer Valley, where I romped around in my youth with my friend Monty Belmonte, among others. And it's called Vacationland. And, here's the deal. If you want to buy the book, that's also fine. But we do have a special arrangement with the publisher, which is that if you buy the book, it frees you from the obligation to read it. So that's a really good deal for any reader, honestly.
For sure.
But if you actually want to read it, you can buy it or just go to the library or go to the book mill. I bet they've got a copy.
I know they do. I was in Cordoba, Spain, and there was a Smith College student who was just telling me, I've been reading this book about Maine. It's called Vacationland. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. And I was
kidding.
Like,
that's very nice.
It was very nice. I'll also say my favorite memory from last time at Solid Sound, John Hodgman, after you curated the Comedy Cabaret, I saw a comedian I'd never seen before in my life.
Yeah.
She was a delight. She was there with her dad. I spent the whole day hanging out with her, watching Wilco with Jonathan Colton, your buddy who was also there.
He was just hanging around.
Just hanging around. And then
I didn't pay him or nothing.
Solid Sound ended. I was doing my laundry, and I put on the Hulu television show The Bear. I kept making my son Enzo look up this sous chef person. What was she in? She's in something amazing.
How did I ever meet Iowa Debris?
Come on!
Hi. Hello.
Hi.
I'm Sydney. I called about the soup position. I'm staging today.
Right.
I'll tell you how I met her. We were trying to get some. We always like to have a mix on the comedy stage of, really seasoned performers and some newcomers, people that you've heard of, people that you haven't heard of yet. We also like to have some people who've got a connection to the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And I had reached out to Paul F. Tompkins, the famous comedian and former performer on the comedy stage at Solid Sound. And he recommended Io to me, and I had not heard of her. And I reached out and I said, do you have any interest in coming all the way to the very, very west, to the very, very east? And she said, yeah, I get to see my dad because she grew up in the Boston area. And so she and her dad came out and she did a stand-up set and she killed, obviously, one of the most incredibly funny and charismatic people of all time. And then the next day, the Bear debuted or something.
It really felt like the next day.
It was just really, it's just really, really wonderful. And I have to say that if folks are not already familiar, if you're a comedy person, you probably have heard of Dave Hill or Todd Barry or Eugene, obviously on Bob's Burgers, et cetera, et cetera.
Hampshire grad.
That's true, absolutely, and grew up in the Boston area, and a current Massachusetts resident. But you might not have heard of Sydney Washington or Brittany Carney, and they are both so incredibly funny. So.
Love Sydney Washington's comedy.
Oh my gosh,
I love her so much. I think she's hilarious.
Yeah, boy, oh boy. And we, if you're going to be at the festival and you want to get out of the sun or the rain or whatever, we have 3 shows during the day starting at noon, and then what is it? It was noon o'clock, 2 p.m., and then 4 p.m. with a half hour or so break between them. And we do a sort of mix and match of the lineup every show. So, there's always something to drop in and see, and it's always better when you're there.
It's happening this Saturday at Solid Sound, Wilco's Festival, and their takeover of Mass Mocha with John Hodgman's Comedy Cabaret. I can't wait, Hodgman. The comedy is always so much fun. The music is always so great, and I love getting to see you in the flesh, even though it's not as much as I used to. At least it's every other summer now.
I liked seeing you right in the face as a metaphor, but seeing me in the flesh feels a little bit.
We're gonna go full high Claudius on this.
We're gonna go swimming
together. It feels a little
Buffalo
Bill.
Yeah, exactly.
Ew.
And may I remind your listeners that Judge John Hodgman, the live production, is coming to the Turner's Falls Shea Theater November 8th. If you've got a dispute that you'd like us to consider for adjudication, go to MaximumFun.org/JJHO and send that in. And I will also send back to you a little pre-sale ticket link so you can get a good seat at that. Not a bad seat in the house, of course. Not bad
really,
seat in the house.
No.
At the Shea, for heaven's sake. It's better when you're there, is what I say.
Yeah.
Thanks, Hodgman.
Bye. Thank you. See you at Solid Sound.
Later in the show, Ava is a typical teen, curious, enthusiastic, spirited. The only difference is she's being raised alone underground by a robot caretaker.
And that caretaker is Mother.
In both senses of the word.
We'll talk with New York Times bestselling author and illustrator from Amherst, Tony DiTerlizzi, about this Friday's Apple TV Plus premiere of another one of his book adaptations, WondLa's.
You're listening to The Fabulous 413 on 88.5 NEPM.
The Fabulous 413 podcast is funded by the UMass 5 College Credit Union, offering co-op advantage checking with cash back on all purchases, plus secure debit card controls, all from the UMass 5 mobile banking app. Insured by NCUA, umass5.coop.
Emily Brewster, resident wordster from Merriam-Webster, our dictionary in Springfield. It is summertime, which our friend that we are about to go see at Solid Sound, who is just on the show today, John Hodgman, likes to say is fun time, summertime fun time, which is when I get to be the guest bailiff on the Judge John Hodgman podcast, and we're going to talk about fun.
Fun.
Until the daddy takes the T-bird away.
Fun period.
Give me a second. If you're having a lot of fun, is something funner or funnest or no?
It is more fun. That's what I would say, right? We're having more fun than a barrel of monkeys.
Here we come. Do you ever say funner?
I think if I do, it's to be intentionally obnoxious.
Yeah.
How about you, Khalees? You don't like funner?
No, funner I don't really use. Funner is for
Yeah.
cakes.
No,
Why
that's
do you
funnel.
think that is? Like, what is the problem with funner and funnest? We say new and newer and newest. Why not fun, funner, funnest?
Well, new is not always fun. Sometimes old is fun. Aren't I, kids?
Sure, yes, and you can have old, older, oldest.
Yeah.
Why not? It's a one-syllable word. Why not fun, funner, funnest?
There's no good reason I'm gonna say Emily Brewster, unless there was one obnoxious writer from some period, probably the 19th century, where they were like, you can't do that.
And then everybody was like, okay, we will not collectively all decided that we will no longer.
Yeah, I feel like I've mostly trained you right. It would really be an 18th century grammarian who would have done that. But still, yes. But in this case, there's actually something else going on. What kind of word do you think of fun as being?
Fun, natural fun.
Like noun, adjective, adverb, preposition.
I mean,
Fun's an adjective.
mostly an adjective.
Except that,
You
like,
could be having fun.
with the way that we're talking about it, fun is a noun.
Yeah. But when you're using
You
it,
are right, Khalees.
is
Yeah.
it? But it's not always a noun, right?
No.
No, it's not always a noun. But when we say, it was so much fun, the party was full of fun, all of those are noun uses. And the adjective use is, what you have in like, oh, that was a fun party, or they're a really fun person to be with. We had a fun time. Those adjective uses used to be disparaged.
Oh.
And people thought that, and for a long time, fun really was only a noun. And then adjective use of noun started to develop and people kind of freaked out.
So people had to use funny instead of fun. Or is funny based off of something else?
Right. Well, they don't mean the same thing,
right?
Like the adjective funny and the adjective fun don't mean the same thing.
Right.
Funny, the adjective dates to 1739, current evidence anyway, with the meaning affording light mirth and laughter, amusing.
Oh,
That's
good.
still basically what it means.
Still the same
right?
thing.
Yeah, still the same thing. But the adjective fun only dates to 1827. It still makes it really quite old, but it's, 100 years newer. And the noun fun is about 1726. So what was funny? Are they the same age?
Maybe almost exactly the same age.
They're almost exactly the same age. Yep. The adjective funny and the noun fun. You could have fun, and then the fun could be funny.
That's like a Dr. Seuss book, I think.
I know it is wet, and the sun is not sunny, but we can have lots of good fun that is funny.
Yes, you could have funny fun, but when you started to have fun, people thought there was something wrong going on. The delay in the acceptance of the adjectival use of fun, that is the explanation for why funner and funnest still sound kind of not right to our ears.
It's interesting that it definitely doesn't sound right, but that this history is so old and we don't really ever think about it, and yet we still adhere to it as native speakers of English.
And also somehow that they're not like directly correlated to each other despite showing up at about the same time.
You mean funny and fun?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting, right?
How did people have fun or think things were funny before that? Maybe they didn't. It was such a bummer of a time.
I mean, chamber pots.
Yeah, right? What was fun or funny? Nothing.
Chamber pots and dysentery and cholera.
Well, pants. I mean, pants have been around a lot longer.
Pants were funny
have
back
always
then.
been
Yes,
funny.
they looked like balloons.
Yeah. So, I mean, as long as they've had pants, they've had fun, right?
I don't know. Sometimes I have fun without pants.
Oh, no.
I don't know how pants are more fun than hose, but okay.
I'd like to say I have fun with hose too, but...
Yeah, I mean, you did.
Now, the word fun comes from an English dialect word that means to hoax. The first fun that you would have might have been at someone's expense.
That also may be the last fun that I just had too.
Fair enough.
That's somehow not surprising.
I love a good hoax.
So neither of you likes funner or funnest.
No.
How do you feel about a use like that party was so fun?
Love it.
Love it.
Okay. So you're fully on board with adjectival fun. You just don't want it to have comparative and superlative forms like the one-syllable adjective that it should.
Yeah, sorry. It's got to take a friend with it.
I'll clearly allow it, but I'm not going to use it unless I'm doing it for dramatic purpose.
It's too dangerous to use on its own. It must have a more or a most.
Yes.
This is really a very good example of the habit of language. This is not logic. Your feelings about this are completely legitimate. You are native speakers of English. This is your language. You will use a word or a word form as long as it seems likely to do the job, right? But if it sounds strange to you, it's too distracting. It doesn't feel right. It doesn't come naturally to you. Or sometimes you think that it'll be distracting to your listener. But this is one of the very, very fascinating things about language. We assimilate these rules without understanding that they are rules at all. And by rules, I mean, I'm talking about, not the rules that the 18th century grammarians and those of their ilk came up with. I mean, the rules like, whether fun can be an adjective or not. You hear it behaving adjectively. You don't have to think of the word adjective to use it as an adjective. You just know that it can modify nouns. You don't even have to know it consciously. You just let it modify nouns in the way that it feels right to do. But because of the lack of frequency that funner and funnest are used in, and especially probably in more formal contexts, even though they are a very natural pattern for an adjective, a one-syllable adjective that ends in N to take.
Like, what were the other examples again?
Clean, cleaner, cleanest.
Oh, yeah.
It's really just, it's one-syllableness. What are some other adjectives that end in N?
Green, greener, greenest.
Yes.
Yeah.
The grass is always more green on the other
Right.
side of the fence.
Now, see, that sounds wrong.
Right. You would want to
Right.
say the grass is always greener.
Right.
It's not easy being green, Emily Brewster.
Having to spend each day the color of the leaves.
No, it's not easy. Now, what do you think about, I feel like fun and funner are often paired with stupider and stupidest because they also don't sound right. And so people like to bring those up together. Now, fun is a better word, I think, because stupid is a mean word. Nobody in my house is allowed to say that anybody else is stupid.
Mine, too. You can say the F word up the wazoo, but you cannot call somebody stupid.
I do call people stupid. I'm sorry. They're not anybody that we know generally. It often has to do with certain people in charge of making certain policies and the policies themselves.
That's almost
Well,
different.
Khalid, you're an adult, so you could come into my house and say stupid. But if you were a household member, you would not be allowed to. You can call things stupid, just not people.
Yeah, I try not to call people stupid. I definitely will call things and their ideas stupid. But stupider and stupidest are definitely things that I use a lot. It's easier than more stupid or most stupid. But most stupid is usually also the apex of stupid. Somehow, most stupid is more stupid than stupidest. I made this sentence.
So when you're talking about the apotheosis of stupidity.
Yes.
That's what I use in my common parlance.
Yeah.
This is the apotheosis of stupidity.
This is the hierarchy of stupidity.
Yes. What about wicked?
Oh, now you're speaking my language, because
I mean,
all of these adjectives should be modified by wicked. Wicked fun, wicked stupid.
But that's a colloquialism, and especially this past weekend, having been at Green River Festival, for some of the people who had spent time in New England, they're like, oh, this is how we know we're in New England.
Oh, yeah. When we were talking to snack time, that's what happened. They were from Philly, and they were like, oh, yeah, wicked. There you guys
there
go.
You go.
Did they say John?
No,
we talked about
you gotta throw that back
strawberry
at them.
and wooder.
Okay, but I mean the adjective wicked. So wicked as an adverb, we say that something can be wicked fun. But what about when wicked is an adjective? Like, is one wicked person wickeder than another or more wicked?
More wicked.
More wicked. I guess you could say wickedest.
The wickedest
Yeah,
witch.
the wickedest
But
witch.
if you say wickedest, it also sounds more like an actual religion as opposed to like, I'm a wickedest.
Yeah, right. The wickedest witch there ever was is dead.
The wickedest witch there ever was.
Wicked, the musical. The movie's coming out this fall.
Got questions. Not sure. I'm going to get good answers.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Wicked, the Broadway musical.
Oh, yes.
And
Heard of it.
the movie version's coming out the fall.
Oh.
Yeah.
I like the weird cyclical nature of Broadway right now is a thing I genuinely don't understand.
Wizard of Oz is a book, and then is a movie, and then is a musical, and now is a movie of the musical.
Yeah.
High School Musical, the musical, the series. It's like the apotheosis of stupidity when it comes to that sort of thing.
Get your head in the game.
The Color Purple's the same way. Like you got it like in book, and then it was on stage, and then it's a film, and then it's back on stage as a musical. Now it's back in film as a musical.
And then
sort of like
watch the trailers carefully, because unless you know what you're going in for, you don't realize it's a musical. They're trying to market it as a not musical, even though it is a musical, both for Wicked and for The Color Purple.
Which doesn't make any sense, because it's just like if they're marketing it as a they shouldn't market it as a remake of the original. The original is great.
Yeah.
Period. Why would you remake this? Whoopi Goldberg was amazing.
Everything you've done to me, already done to you.
You know what this is, Emily Brewster? Wicked stupid.
Yes.
Well, I think if they're going to have these iterations, maybe they should use the comparative and superlative forms that the English language offers.
Wickeder?
Right.
And
right.
wickedest.
The color purpler.
Purpler. Purplest? Well, like
the cullest purple.
Well, like purplest is fine, but somehow purpler is difficult for me.
You'll be purpler.
You're gonna be popular.
Wow, we've really gone on a Broadway tangent with this one. And you know what, Emily Brewster?
Yeah.
That was fun. I don't know if it was the funnest or funner, but it was fun. Up next, we'll take you to Orbona, where 16-year-old Ava embarks on a quest to find humans, her home, and her true identity.
That is the plot of the new Apple TV series WondLa, and we'll talk to the author and illustrator of the trilogy the TV series is based on, Amherst's Tony DiTerlizzi, next.
You're listening to the Fabulous 413 on 88.5 NEPM.
NEPM's podcasts are funded by Armbrook Village Senior Living in Westfield, with support services designed to help seniors age in place, including a Compass Memory Support Neighborhood. More at armbrookvillage.com.
This is me, Eva. And this is Mother. I was raised underground, in a bunker.
The Earth was sick and needed time to heal without us.
Now, after years of training, I am finally ready to meet other humans. What's on the other side of this?
I don't have information on restricted areas.
WondLa. Is someone looking for me?
Intruder in sanctuary. What is that thing? I do not know. This vent shaft leads to the surface. Go!
Whoa. Where am I?
Welcome back to the Fabulous 413. That was the trailer from the new Apple Plus TV series WondLa, which debuts this Friday.
The series is based on the illustrated trilogy created by Amherst's Tony DiTerlizzi, whom we welcome back to the show. Welcome back, Tony.
Dun, dun, dun.
Dun, dun, dun.
Oh, thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be back.
This has been a big spring and early summer for you, because the last time we had you on with Holly Black, because it was the premiere of the television adaptation of the Spiderwick Chronicles.
You're doing a lot of TV. Is it difficult having your stuff having such a series of your stuff adapted at the same time, basically?
It's a bizarre feeling, to be honest with you, because I experienced that in 2008 with the Spiderwick feature, and then thought, all right, what's the next book that's going to get adapted? No, dude, that's going to be over a decade from now. just that's going to take a little while. So no, I'm excited. It's amazing. It's completely coincidence that Spiderwick and WondLa happen to be happening so close together. They're at different studios, different teams of people, but wow, here we are.
Well, when we last left our hero, Tony DiTerlizzi, I was so excited to go home and watch Roku, which is where Spiderwick lives, be the Roku City, be skinned in the world of Spiderwick. And I'm like texting Tony like real-time updates. Oh, I could see this on Roku City. Oh, I could see that. And then it goes on to become the most popular Roku series
ever
that
they've ever had. Yeah. That was an unbelievable thing. I think I wouldn't be surprised if we see more original Roku series moving forward.
Yeah.
That wouldn't surprise me.
I mean, massive good luck with that.
I know. Holly and I have all appendages crossed.
Yeah.
Yes, me too, because that ended on such a cliffhanger. It was such a
certainly
great.
did.
I loved telling people that even if I'd never read the books, which I've now read multiple times, even the Beyond the Spiderwick
I
Chronicles.
have still never read the books. I'm so sorry. I gave them to my siblings. I never read them.
I think the series is wonderful and stands on its own as just a really fun television show.
They did a fun. It's fun. The cast is terrific.
Oh, yeah.
I thought the kids were great. That's really, for me, that's the heart of it, and I love it. Yeah.
Now your new television television show is WondLa, coming on Apple Plus TV. Khalees and I have been binge watching it. What a hard life we have. We got to binge watch this incredible new animated show.
It's so nice, and it's such a good adaptation. We were mentioning that we'd both read this one. I had read, and seeing some of those key points happen in the TV series was just really lovely. But it's also interesting to just see a teenager making typical bad teenager decisions. But in the original book, the character of Ava is 12.
Yeah.
What about the decision to make her older in this series?
Yeah, I think it's one of those things. We faced that with Spiderwick, both in the adaptation of the feature film and the television series. I think when you're reading a book and you're thinking of it in your mind, it plays different when you actually see it happen.
Mm-hmm.
And then it can be a little more intense. And I think it was a good decision to age her up a little bit because they wanted to ramp up the action sequences. And it's just trickier to do. It's also a different now you're casting a younger actor. That's problematic when it's a live action thing because kids can only act for so long. But even with a voice actress for playing Eva's part, now you're in a different league of actors that you're kind of tapping as opposed to an adult who can, sound like a teenager, which Janine does and does an amazing, unbelievable job.
Janine Mason.
Yes.
There are some other actors of note who are the voice actors in this.
Note.
Terry Hatcher.
Terry Hatcher.
His mother.
So excited to have
on so many levels.
her.
As in the colloquial term mother, which I don't know if you're familiar with, like Dolly Parton is mother, we would call it. You have a certain standing, especially in the gay community.
Yes.
Terry Hatcher as Lois Lane. And as mother.
But she also voiced the audiobooks.
She did the audiobooks.
Was it like a direct line being like, oh, no, she's already done this. I think that she's keyed into being mother.
You're hitting on my big scheme, my giant plan back when they were first optioning it and they hadn't read all the books. I'm like, Terry Hatcher did these. Can I send you a set of audiobooks? I have them on CD. Now I've got like a closet full of CDs because who has CDs anymore? But I just sent a box full of the audiobooks out to Skydance Animation. And the great news is that animation team is kind of a super group formed by animators from Pixar, animators from Disney Features, animators from DreamWorks, Blue Sky. It's insane when you go and you're like, oh, what movies did you work on? And it's like all your favorite movies. And a lot of them had worked with Terry before for voice work. So it was kind of a no-brainer to have her remain involved.
Nice.
Also awesome that Alan Tudyk from Fireflies is in there as well.
I know. So I get to sit in the sound recording sessions, and I'm like, Chris Farley, you remember like when you were in Firefly? Yeah, that was awesome. That was awesome. Yeah, even though he's done like 9 billion, voice.
Remember that one time when you were in Tucker and Dale versus Evil and like all of the terrible kids in the woods? Yeah, that was great too.
And Brad Garrett as Otto is another notable
amazing
name that people may know that
absolutely.
Is behind the voices in WondLa, which will debut on Apple Plus TV.
Plus an obligatory John Ratzenberger character, which is amazing too. Yes. Oh. And to get to see John work was pretty awesome. Yeah. So that was amazing.
Not yet listed even in the IMDb.
Dun, dun, dun. Uh-oh, so you've heard it here first.
While we were going forward, there was a couple of questions like, is that who I think it is?
Yes.
So there we go.
Indeed
Excellent.
it is. Yes.
And we're speaking with Tony DiTerlizzi about this. Was this the first book series that you wrote? I mean, it's an illustrated chapter book. Is that how you would describe the trilogy?
Yeah.
It's not a graphic novel.
No.
And it's not a picture book.
No.
But it's an
classically illustrated middle grade chapter book a la Charlotte's Web or The Wizard of Oz.
Yeah. So I felt like there were, I haven't looked at it since it came out probably, but the book, there were more illustrations than you'd see in a Charlotte's Web or a Wizard of Oz. No?
Yes. You're absolutely right. Yeah. Yes. That's coming off of Spiderweb. I mean, the funny thing is WondLa in the Tony D timeline shares a lot with Spiderwick because the Spiderwick story is about these events that happened 100 years ago about this old guy who can see fairies, makes a field guide to fairies, and then modern day kids find it. WondLa was almost the inverse of that when I was thinking of it at the time. I was like, oh, what about a story from the future that could somehow come back to present day time? And that's like the very earliest seeds of ideas for that story.
Some of the other ideas that pop up in this are environmentalism. You know, our main character has been raised underground by a robot.
Yes.
Because of, I don't want to spoil too much of it, but because
this happens in the first episode. It's not really a spoiler.
Well, yeah, there's some we could spoil, but we won't. But something bad has happened to Earth.
Yeah.
Surprise! We're living it right now.
So was that a conscious decision to turn this into a cautionary tale of sorts?
So, okay, the books I loved when I was 10, and that's who I'm always writing for. What does 10-year-old Tony want that old 50-year-old Tony can make? That is always like where I start from. And the books that I loved asked a lot of questions but didn't necessarily give a lot of answers. It was up to you to kind of how do you feel about it. And so that is always what I try to aim for. So when I finally sit down in 2008, 2009 to really start writing this book, a couple things are there. My daughter, Sophia, is 2 at the time. I turned 40 at the time. And so I'm in a weird contemplative looking backwards and looking forwards place in my life. And I thought, geez, a lot of stuff has changed in my 40 short years. What's the world going to be like when Sophia turns 40? And that starts the chain of thought of like, what's technology? Like, how reliant are we going to be on tech? Surprise, very reliant, right? But in 2008, the iPhone's just coming out, right? It's a very different time than it is now. And now we're hearing like, you know, look at the impact that tech is having, especially on children and teens. I'm also thinking at the time about the natural world. Like, is mankind, as we become more reliant on technology, are we also somehow separating ourselves further and further from the plants and animals that we share the planet with, that frankly we're here first.
Right.
And that I'm always wrestling with that. It's always something. It's very clearly a theme in Spiderwick as well.
I think it's a really interesting balance too, because Ava as main character is trying to the technology is trying to teach her about the natural world, but the only interaction she has with the natural world is through this technology, which is in itself limited.
Right.
So when things happen and she goes on journeys, the way that she interacts with the natural world ends up being kind of it's novel. Like everything is novel because none of this is recognizable or to any of her experiences. And I thought that was a really cool point to hit in the novel and in the work.
I think, well, thank you. I think because as a parent, I'm thinking I can only teach my child so much. And at a certain point, they have to go out and live and experience and learn it on their own. And that's a big part of what's happening in this story. There's two kind of parental characters. There's the mother robot you talk about, which is the helicopter parent, which was partly me. Oh, God, I don't want anything to happen to her. Oh, what if she falls? Oh, what if she gets it? And then there's Rovinder Kit, this alien they meet that becomes kind of her surrogate father, which is my dad in the 1970s, which is like, come home when the street lights are on. Don't get in too many fights. I don't want to have to go to the emergency room to pick you up, and I'll see you for dinner, right? And so it's me trying to reconcile as a writer, as a parent, what's the best way? And again, no answers, just there's one way or there's this other way.
I also like that there was this conversation about how much of a parent Mother actually is. And it's between Mother and Ava both have different ideas about how that works, even though they're clearly parent and child.
Right.
But it's also, you give a sympathetic view of technology in that way, too. Khalees and I always talk about the robot takeover. Khalees has a more positive idea that it could be the C-3POs of the world that take over, or I guess in this case, the mothers.
Right.
And they have even though she is a robot, an undeniable familial relationship, which is something that we as humans now in the real world wrestle with. I never yell at Alexa or Siri. I always feel like, don't be rude to this digital creation that's helping you,
It's an interesting concept, too, because I think, especially as a Gen Xer, we grew up on the Terminator. And,
yes.
And look, we are seeing firsthand that AI is a double-edged sword and what AI can do, but it's only as powerful as the people who programmed it. But you can't help but wonder that if you were to make a perfect machine, a perfect android, would it be morally better, kinder than a human?
Fair.
I don't know, but I wonder.
Why is the goldfish the deadliest predator?
It's to your point of that the technology is totally, completely off. Fair. No, yeah, they just totally, yeah. Too much time has passed. There's a great bit that George Carlin used to do where he talked about the end of the world. And he's like, it's not going to be the end of the world. The planet's been here for billions of the years. It'll be fine. But one day it's going to shake us off like a bad case of fleas. That is totally what this story is talking about.
It's called WondLa. You should get the trilogy and read it. It's fun and it's beautifully illustrated. And then you'll be ready for the television show that premieres on Apple Plus TV this Friday. And the thing that's great to know about this is sometimes you see it with all these streaming services. You got a show and you're in love with it and you never know if there's going to be a second season. We do already know that the completion of this trilogy is in the works and will be there.
Yes. They don't have release dates for seasons 2 and 3, but all 3 books are being adapted.
Which means you don't have a real cliffhanger. You've just got a short period of time to wait to finish your story out.
You can pour your whole heart and soul into it without worrying and having to guard your heart against maybe not knowing how this story in its visual form will end.
No, just against the other characters doing things that you maybe would advise against.
Yeah. Amherst Tony DiTerlizzi, congratulations on a new show. It's fantastic. I can't wait to finish it. Khalees is one episode ahead of me, and I will finish it very shortly.
Yeah, I'm going to try not to ruin anything else for Monty here because
I already read the book. So.
Well, yeah, but we both have to remember them.
Yes. Thanks again for coming in.
Thank you so much for having me again.
And congratulations.
Thank you. Have a good summer.
Oh,
yes.
We'll do our best.
Tomorrow on the show, U.S. Congressman Jim McGovern joins us, as always, back from India, though. He didn't tell us he was going to be there last time. We'll see how he was hanging out with the Dalai Lama and get some early thoughts on the debate that's tomorrow night. You can send your questions for the Congressman, thefab413 at nepm.org. I'm Monty Belmonte.
I'm Khalees Smith. We'll see you tomorrow on the Fabulous 413.